The rich CEO fired a pregnant employee years ago. But when a young man entered his office, Victor Caldwell sat behind his imposing mahogany desk, the New York skyline sprawling behind him through floor-to-ceiling windows. At 58, he was the picture of success. Silver-haired, impeccably dressed, and wielding the power that came with being CEO of Caldwell Industries, a Fortune 500 company he had built from the ground up. Victor's life had been a series of calculated moves and ruthless decisions. He prided himself on his ability to compartmentalize, to separate business from pleasure, and to never let emotions cloud his judgment. This approach had served him well, propelling him from a middle-class upbringing to the upper echelons of New York's elite. But beneath the polished exterior and confident smirk lay a man haunted by a decision made 24 years ago. A decision that he had buried deep, convincing himself it was for the best. A decision involving Amara Johnson. Amara had been a bright, ambitious intern at Caldwell Industries. The daughter of Jamaican immigrants, she had worked her way through college and was determined to make her mark in the corporate world. Her intelligence and drive had caught Victor's eye, and what began as mentorship soon turned into a clandestine affair. When Amara discovered she was pregnant, Victor's carefully constructed world threatened to unravel. In a moment of panic, he had made a choice that would define the next 2 decades of his life. He fired Amara, paid her a substantial sum to keep quiet, and severed all ties. In the years that followed, Victor's empire grew. He married Evelyn, a woman from a prominent family, and they had 2 children. To the outside world, he was a devoted family man and a philanthropist, but the guilt of his past actions never truly left him. Amara, devastated by Victor's betrayal, had left New York. With the money from the settlement, she moved to California, where she raised her son, Marcus, as a single mother. She never told Marcus about his father, channeling her pain into ensuring her son had every opportunity she could provide. Marcus grew into a remarkable young man, brilliant, driven, and possessing a strong sense of justice. He excelled in school and earned a full scholarship to Stanford, where he studied law. Now 24, he had recently graduated and was beginning his career at a prestigious firm in New York. As Victor sat in his office on this crisp autumn morning, he had no idea that the carefully buried past was about to collide with his present. The man about to walk through his door would shatter the illusion of control he had maintained for over 2 decades, forcing him to confront the consequences of his actions and potentially changing the course of multiple lives forever. The intercom on Victor's desk buzzed, jolting him from his reverie. His assistant's voice came through, crisp and professional. "Mr. Caldwell, there's a Mr. Marcus Johnson here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he insists it's urgent." Victor frowned. The name didn't ring any bells, and he wasn't in the habit of taking unscheduled meetings. But something, perhaps curiosity, perhaps fate, made him pause before dismissing the visitor. "Send him in, Rebecca," Victor said, straightening his tie and adopting the commanding posture that had intimidated countless business rivals over the years. The door opened, and a young man walked in. Victor's breath caught in his throat. It was like looking at a ghost, or more accurately, a younger version of himself. The man had Victor's jawline, his nose, even the way he carried himself. But his skin was a warm brown, his eyes a shade darker than Victor's, and there was a fire in them that Victor recognized all too well. "Mr. Caldwell," the young man said, his voice steady but with an undercurrent of barely contained emotion. "My name is Marcus Johnson. I believe you knew my mother, Amara Johnson." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Victor gripped the edge of his desk, his knuckles turning white. The carefully constructed walls he'd have built on that part of his past came crashing down in an instant. "Marcus," Victor managed to say, his voice barely above a whisper, "please, sit down." Marcus remained standing, his gaze fixed on Victor. "I'll stand, thank you. I didn't come here for pleasantries." Victor nodded, trying to regain his composure. How is your mother?" A flash of pain crossed Marcus's face. "She passed away 3 months ago. Cancer." The news hit Victor like a physical blow. Amara, gone. The vibrant, ambitious woman he had known reduced to a memory, and he hadn't known. Hadn't been there. "I'm so sorry," Victor said, and he meant it. "I didn't know." "No, you wouldn't have," Marcus replied, his tone sharp. You made sure of that 24 years ago when you fired her and paid her off to disappear." Victor flinched at the accusation, true as it was. "Marcus, you have to understand." "Understand what?" Marcus interrupted. "That you got my mother pregnant and then discarded her like she was nothing? That you've spent the last 24 years playing the role of upstanding citizen while she struggled to raise me on her own?" Victor stood up, moving around the desk. "It wasn't like that. I was young, scared. The company was just taking off. I thought I was doing what was best for everyone." Marcus laughed bitterly. "Best for everyone? Or best for you, Mr. Caldwell?" The use of his formal name stunned more than Victor would have expected. This was his son standing before him, flesh and blood, a living embodiment of his past actions. "Why are you here, Marcus?" Victor asked, dreading the answer but knowing he had to hear it. Marcus reached into his suit jacket and pulled out an envelope. "Mother left me a letter, explaining everything. Who you were, what happened. She made me promise not to seek you out until after she was gone." He placed the envelope on Victor's desk. "I'm not here for your money or your name. I've done fine without either for 24 years. I'm here because I needed to see for myself the man who could do what you did." Victor felt the weight of Marcus's judgment, and for the first time in years, he found himself at a loss for words. The cool, calculating businessman was gone, replaced by a man forced to confront the consequences of his past. "What do you want from me?" Victor finally asked, his voice hoarse. Marcus's eyes bore into him. "I want you to know that she succeeded, despite what you did. I graduated top of my class at Stanford Law. I'm starting at Sullivan and Cromwell next month. I did all of this without your money, without your connections. I did it because of her." The pride in Marcus's voice was palpable, and Victor felt a strange mix of shame and admiration. This was his son, accomplished and strong, shaped by a woman he had wronged. As Marcus turned to leave, Victor called out, "Wait, please, can we talk?" Marcus paused at the door, his hand on the handle. The tension in the room was palpable, years of unspoken words and buried emotions hanging between them. "I've said what I came to say," Marcus replied, not turning around. "What happens next is up to you." With that, he walked out, leaving Victor alone with the letter on his desk and the weight of his past pressing down on him. The carefully constructed world Victor had built was shaken to its core, and he knew that nothing would ever be the same again. Victor stared at the closed door long after Marcus had left, his mind reeling from the encounter. The envelope Marcus had left seemed to pulsate with an energy of its own, demanding his attention. With trembling hands, Victor picked it up and opened it. Inside was a letter, written in a familiar handwriting that transported him back 24 years in an instant. Amara's handwriting. He began to read. "Dear Victor, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone and our son has finally met you. Yes, our son. I've thought about this moment for 24 years, wondering what I would say to you if I ever got the chance. There's so much I want to express, anger, hurt, disappointment. But mostly, I want you to know about the amazing person our son has become, despite your absence. Marcus is everything I could have hoped for in a child. He's brilliant, kind, and driven. He has your determination and my compassion. Every day I saw pieces of you in him, and it was both a blessing and a curse, a reminder of what could have been and what was lost. I won't pretend that raising him alone was easy. There were times when I struggled, when I was tempted to reach out to you for help. But I knew that would come at a cost, the cost of my self-respect and Marcus's identity. So I persevered, and we made it through. I'm not writing this to make you feel guilty, though I suspect you will. I'm writing because I want you to understand what you missed. The first steps, the first words, the school plays and graduation ceremonies, the late-night talks and the early morning rushes, the joy and the heartbreak of watching our child grow into a man. Victor, I loved you once, part of me probably always will. But I can't forgive what you did. Not for myself, but for Marcus. He deserved better. He deserved a father. I don't know what will happen when Marcus meets you. I've raised him to be his own man, to make his own choices. Whatever he decides, I hope you'll respect it. And if there's any part of the man I once knew still in you, I hope you'll take this chance to be a part of his life. Not because you deserve it, but because he deserves to know his father. Goodbye, Victor. I hope you found peace with your choices. I know I have with mine. Amara. Victor's hands shook as he finished the letter. Tears he didn't know he was capable of shedding streamed down his face. The full weight of what he had lost, what he had thrown away, crashed over him. He thought of his other children, the ones he had raised. The birthday parties, the school events, the family vacations, all the moments he had shared with them, moments he had denied Marcus. And Amara, strong, beautiful Amara, facing it all alone. Victor had always prided himself on his business acumen, on his ability to make tough decisions for the greater good of his company. But sitting there, holding Amara's letter, he realized that the toughest decision he'd ever made had been his greatest mistake. The revelation was earth-shattering. The carefully constructed narrative he had built around his life, the successful businessman, the family man, the philanthropist, crumbled in the face of this undeniable truth. He had abandoned his child, had robbed Marcus of a father, and himself of a son. As the sun began to set over the New York skyline, casting long shadows across his office, Victor Caldwell came to a profound realization. His life's work, his wealth, his power, none of it mattered in the face of this long-buried truth. He had a son out there, a brilliant young man who had succeeded despite his absence. The question now was, what was he going to do about it? Victor Caldwell sat in his office long into the night, Amara's letter clutched in his hand, the weight of his past hanging heavy on his shoulders. As the city lights flickered to life outside his window, he came to a decision that would alter the course of his life and the lives of those around him. He would try to make amends, not because he deserved forgiveness, but because Marcus deserved to know his father, even if that knowledge came 24 years too late. The next morning, Victor called an emergency meeting with his board of directors. The room was tense as he stood before them, his usual confidence replaced by a solemn determination. "I have an announcement to make," he began, his voice steady despite his inner turmoil. "I have recently discovered that I have another son, born 24 years ago to a former employee. I intend to publicly acknowledge him and, if he's willing, bring him into the company." The room erupted into chaos. Board members shouted questions and concerns, their faces a mix of shock and outrage. Victor's longtime friend and CFO, Richard, managed to make himself heard above the din. "Victor, have you lost your mind? Think about what this could do to the company, to your family. The scandal alone could tank our stock prices." Victor held up a hand, silencing the room. "I've made my decision. I've spent 24 years running from this, and I won't do it anymore. Whatever the consequences, I'll face them." As he left the boardroom, Victor could hear the heated discussions continue. He knew this was just the beginning of the fallout, but for the first time in years, he felt a sense of purpose that went beyond profit margins and stock prices. His next stop was his home, where he had to face Evelyn and their children. The conversation was agonizing. Evelyn, always the picture of poise, broke down in tears. His daughter Elizabeth stormed out of the room. Only his son, Victor Jr., remained silent, watching his father with an unreadable expression. "How could you do this to us?" Evelyn sobbed. "To me, was our life together just a lie?" Victor reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "No, Evelyn. What we have is real. But I made a terrible mistake before I met you, and now I have to try to make it right." As he left his family home, Victor felt as if he was walking away from one life and toward another. The consequences of his decision were already unfolding, and he knew there would be more to come. The next day, Victor reached out to Marcus through his law firm. He requested a meeting, not at his office this time, but at a small cafe near Marcus's apartment. To his surprise, Marcus agreed. When Victor arrived at the cafe, he found Marcus already there. His posture tense, his expression guarded. Victor sat down, his heart pounding. "Thank you for meeting me," he began. "I've read your mother's letter, and I want to try to make things right. I know I can never make up for the past 24 years, but if you're willing, I'd like to be a part of your life going forward." Marcus studied him for a long moment before speaking. "Why now? Is it guilt? Or do you just want to assuage your conscience?" Victor shook his head. "It's not about me. It's about you. You deserve to know your father, to have a relationship with him if you want it, and selfishly, I want to know my son." He went on to explain the steps he had taken, his announcement to the board, his confession to his family. Marcus listened, his expression softening slightly as he realized the extent of what Victor was risking. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Victor concluded. "I'm just asking for a chance." Marcus was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. "I can't promise anything, but I'm willing to try." It was a small victory, but to Victor, it felt monumental. As they parted ways with plans to meet again the following week, Victor felt a glimmer of hope. But the consequences of his decision were swift and far-reaching. The next morning, the story broke in the press. Caldwell Industries' CEO acknowledges secret love child screamed the headlines. The company's stock took an immediate hit. Victor's phone rang incessantly with calls from shareholders, business partners, and reporters. His PR team worked around the clock to manage the crisis. Evelyn left for her sister's house, taking their children with her. At the office, Victor could feel the shift in how people looked at him. Some avoided eye contact, while others watched him with open curiosity or judgment. He overheard whispers in the hallways and saw the sideways glances in meetings. But amidst the chaos and the backlash, Victor felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in years. He was no longer running from his past. He was facing it head-on, accepting the consequences of his actions and trying to build a relationship with the son he had denied for so long. As he sat in his office, watching the media frenzy unfold on the TV, Victor realized that this decision, difficult as it was the first truly selfless thing he had done in decades. Whatever came next, he would face it knowing he was finally doing the right thing. As Victor Caldwell grappled with the consequences of his decision, a secondary plot began to unfold, centered around his son, Marcus Johnson. The young lawyer found himself thrust into a spotlight he never asked for, his carefully constructed life turned upside down by the revelation of his true parentage. At Sullivan and Cromwell, Marcus's colleagues looked at him differently. Some were openly curious, peppering him with questions about his newfound father. Others were more subtle, whispering behind his back. The senior partners, sensing a potential PR goldmine, began to consider how they might leverage Marcus's connection to the Caldwell empire. One afternoon, as Marcus was preparing for a crucial meeting, his supervising partner, James Hawthorne, called him into his office. "Marcus," Hawthorne began, his tone carefully neutral. "In light of recent developments, we think it might be beneficial for you to take lead on the Caldwell Industries account." Marcus felt a surge of anger. "With all due respect, sir, I'd rather not. I was assigned to the Thompson case, and I'd like to see it through." Hawthorne's expression hardened. "This isn't a request, Marcus. The firm believes your unique position could be invaluable in securing Caldwell Industries as a long-term client." Realizing he was being used as a pawn, Marcus made a decision that would alter the course of his career. "I understand, sir. In that case, please accept my resignation, effective immediately." The news of Marcus's resignation spread quickly through New York's legal circles. Many saw it as a noble stand against nepotism, while others viewed it as a foolish career move. For Marcus, it was a necessary step in maintaining his integrity and independence. Meanwhile, Evelyn Caldwell was dealing with her own fallout from Victor's revelation. At the country club where she had reigned as queen bee for years, she now found herself the subject of pitying looks and not-so-subtle gossip. Her closest friends, women she had confided in for decades, suddenly seemed distant. One day, as Evelyn was leaving her weekly tennis match, she overheard two women talking in the locker room. "Can you imagine?" one said. "All these years, and she had no idea. Makes you wonder what else Victor's been hiding." The other woman squeaked sympathetically. "Poor Evelyn. First the scandal, and now I hear their son's been seen around town with that Johnson boy. The whole family's falling apart." Evelyn froze, her hand on her locker door. Her son, Victor Jr., had been spending time with Marcus? This was news to her. Determined to get to the bottom of it, Evelyn decided to confront her son. She found Victor Jr. in his room, packing a bag. "Where are you going?" she demanded. Victor Jr. looked up, his expression a mix of defiance and resignation. "I'm moving out, Mom. I've gotten an apartment with Marcus." Evelyn felt as if the floor had dropped out from under her. "What? Why?" "Because he's my brother," Victor Jr. said simply. "And right now, he needs family more than ever." As Evelyn struggled to process this information, she realized that the consequences of Victor's past weren't just affecting him, they were reshaping their entire family dynamic. Across town, Marcus was settling into his new apartment, still reeling from the changes in his life. A knock at the door revealed Victor Jr., duffel bag in hand. "Hey bro," Victor Jr. said with a tentative smile. "Got room for one more?" As the two young men stood there, sizing each other up, they realized they were at the beginning of a new chapter. One that neither of them could have anticipated, but one that held the potential for a bond they had both always longed for. This secondary plot served to highlight the far-reaching consequences of Victor's decision, showing how the revelation of a long-buried secret could create ripple effects that touched every aspect of multiple lives. It also set the stage for new alliances and conflicts, adding depth and complexity to the unfolding drama of the Caldwell-Johnson family saga. In the months following Victor's public acknowledgement of Marcus, the relationships within and around the Caldwell family underwent significant transformations. The once clearly defined boundaries of family, business, and society blurred, creating new connections and straining existing ones. Victor and Marcus's relationship, the catalyst for all the change, developed in fits and starts. Their weekly meetings at the cafe became a fixture in both their lives. At first, the conversations were stilted, filled with long silences and cautious probing. But as time passed, they began to find common ground. One afternoon, as they discussed a challenging case Marcus was working on pro bono, Victor found himself offering advice not as a CEO, but as a father. "You know," he said, leaning forward, "I faced a similar situation early in my career. The key is to..." As he spoke, Victor realized this was the first time he had shared a personal anecdote with Marcus. The younger man listened intently, his eyes reflecting a mix of surprise and interest. "That's actually really helpful," Marcus admitted. "Thanks." It was a small moment, but it marked a shift in their dynamic. They weren't just two men bound by biology and obligation anymore. They were starting to become father and son. Meanwhile, the relationship between Victor Jr. and Marcus flourished in unexpected ways. Living together, they discovered shared interests and complementary personalities. Victor Jr., always the more reserved of the Caldwell children, found in Marcus the brother he never knew he wanted. One evening, as they were preparing dinner in their shared apartment, Victor Jr. broached a subject he'd been avoiding. "You know," he said, carefully chopping vegetables, "I used to resent you. The idea of you, I mean. When Dad told us about you, I was so angry." Marcus paused, wooden spoon hovering over the pot he was stirring. "And now?" Victor Jr. smiled ruefully. "Now I'm just glad you're here. It's like I found a piece of myself I didn't know was missing." The brothers shared a look of understanding, their bond deepening in that moment of vulnerability. Evelyn's relationships, on the other hand, were strained to the breaking point. Her marriage to Victor, once a pillar of stability in her life, now felt like quicksand. Every conversation seemed to lead back to Marcus, to Victor's betrayal, to the life they thought they had versus the reality they now faced. During a particularly heated argument, Evelyn finally voiced the fear that had been gnawing at her. "Do you wish you had stayed with her?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "With Amara?" Victor's response was immediate and heartfelt. "No, Evelyn, I love you. Our life together, our children, it's not a consolation prize. It's everything to me." His words, and the sincerity behind them, marked the beginning of a long and difficult process of rebuilding trust. Elizabeth, Victor and Evelyn's daughter, struggled the most with the new family dynamic. She had always been Daddy's little girl, and Marcus's existence threatened that special bond. Her resentment manifested in cold shoulders and cutting remarks whenever Marcus was around. The tension came to a head at a family dinner, the first time all the Caldwells and Marcus were in the same room. When Marcus offered to help Elizabeth with her college applications, she lashed out. "I don't need your help," she snapped. "You're not really part of this family, so stop trying to act like you are." The table fell silent. Marcus, hurt but understanding, began to stand up to leave. But before he could, Victor Jr. spoke up. "Liz, that's enough," he said firmly. "Marcus is our brother, whether you like it or not, and personally, I'm glad he's here." Elizabeth, shocked by her usually agreeable brother's stance, left the table in tears. But the incident marked a turning point. In standing up for Marcus, Victor Jr. had solidified their brotherhood in a way no DNA test ever could. As the weeks turned into months, the relationships continued to evolve. Victor and Marcus found a comfortable rhythm, their meetings expanding to include business discussions and even the occasional game of golf. Victor Jr. and Marcus became not just brothers but best friends, their apartment a haven of understanding in the storm of family drama. Evelyn, through therapy and honest conversations with Victor, began to heal. She even took the first tentative steps towards getting to know Marcus, inviting him for tea one afternoon. Elizabeth, seeing how Marcus had enriched her brother's life, slowly began to thaw. While not yet close, she at least stopped treating him with open hostility. These evolving relationships were not without their challenges. There were still arguments, misunderstandings, and moments of doubt. But with each passing day, the patchwork family grew stronger, bound together by choice as much as by blood. As Victor watched his expanded family interact at a weekend barbecue, he felt a sense of bittersweet joy. The road had been difficult, and there was still a long way to go. But seeing Marcus and Victor Jr. laughing together, Evelyn engaged in polite conversation with Marcus, and even Elizabeth cracking a reluctant smile at one of Marcus's jokes, he knew that they were on the right path. The relationships that had been fractured by his past mistakes were slowly healing, creating something new and beautiful in the process. It wasn't the family he had envisioned all those years ago, but Victor was beginning to think it might be even better. The annual Caldwell Industries Charity Gala had always been the social event of the season, a night when New York's elite gathered to see and be seen, while ostensibly raising money for various causes. This year, however, the atmosphere was charged with an undercurrent of tension and curiosity. It was to be Marcus's first public appearance as Victor Caldwell's son. The grand ballroom of the Waldorf Astoria was a sea of designer gowns and tuxedos. Whispers and sidelong glances followed Victor as he made his way through the crowd, shaking hands and exchanging pleasantries. Evelyn was by his side, her smile fixed and brittle. When Marcus entered, a hush fell over the room. He cut a striking figure in his perfectly tailored tuxedo, his resemblance to a younger Victor unmistakable. Victor Jr. was at his side, a show of solidarity that didn't go unnoticed by the watching crowd. As Victor stepped up to the podium to give his annual speech, he could feel the weight of hundreds of eyes upon him. This was more than just a charity gala now, it was a public reckoning. "Good evening, everyone," he began, his voice steady despite his nerves. "Thank you all for coming tonight. Before we begin, I have something important to say." He paused, his gaze finding Marcus in the crowd. Their eyes met, and Victor drew strength from the quiet dignity he saw there. "Many of you have heard the rumors, read the headlines. Tonight, I want to set the record straight. 24 years ago, I made a terrible mistake. I turned my back on someone who needed me, on responsibilities I should have faced. I can't change the past, but I can acknowledge it and try to do better." A murmur ran through the crowd. Victor continued, his voice growing stronger. "Marcus Johnson is my son. I may not have been there for the first 24 years of his life, but I'm here now, and I'm proud to call him my son." The room erupted in a mixture of gasps, applause, and furious whispers. Victor held up a hand, silencing the crowd. "I know this news has come as a shock to many of you. It's been a difficult journey for my family, for Marcus, and for me. But tonight isn't about scandal or gossip. It's about family, about second chances, and about doing what's right, no matter how late." He gestured for Marcus to join him on stage. After a moment's hesitation, Marcus made his way forward, Victor Jr. close behind him. As Marcus reached the podium, Victor did something that shocked everyone in the room, including Marcus himself. He hugged his son right there in front of New York's elite. "I'd like you all to meet my son, Marcus Johnson," Victor said, his voice thick with emotion. "He's a brilliant young lawyer, a man of integrity, and someone I'm just beginning to have the privilege of knowing. Marcus, welcome to the family." The room was silent for a beat, then erupted into applause. It wasn't universal. There were still plenty of disapproving looks and whispered criticisms, but it was genuine and heartfelt for many. As Victor, Marcus, and Victor Jr. stood together on that stage, Evelyn felt something shift inside her. Seeing her husband publicly embrace his past and his son, she made a split-second decision. She walked up to the stage and joined them, taking Marcus's hand in a show of acceptance. Elizabeth, watching from the crowd, felt tears prick her eyes. In that moment, seeing her family united despite everything, she realized her anger and resentment were only hurting herself. She made her way to the stage as well, completing the family picture. The image of the Caldwell family, Victor, Evelyn, Victor Jr., Elizabeth, and Marcus, standing together on that stage became the defining moment of the night. It was a public declaration of acceptance, a new beginning for a family that had been fractured by secrets and lies. As the gala continued around them, the Caldwell family stood united, facing their new reality together. The road ahead would not be easy, but in that moment, they were stronger than they had ever been. This climactic event marked a turning point, not just for the Caldwell family, but for their entire social circle. It was a moment that would be talked about for years to come, a public reckoning that forced everyone present to confront their own prejudices and preconceptions. For Victor, it was the moment he truly became a father to Marcus. For Marcus, it was an acceptance he had never dared to hope for. And for the rest of the Caldwell family, it was the beginning of a new chapter, one where secrets were replaced by honesty and where the true meaning of family was redefined. In the wake of the charity gala, the Caldwell family found themselves navigating a new landscape, both personally and professionally. The public acknowledgement of Marcus had opened a Pandora's box of reactions, ranging from support to outright hostility. The process of resolving these conflicts became a delicate balancing act that tested the newfound unity of the family. One of the first major challenges came from within Caldwell Industries. A group of conservative board members, led by the influential Harold Whitmore, called for an emergency meeting to discuss Victor's position as CEO. "This scandal has tarnished the company's reputation," Whitmore argued, his face flushed with indignation. "The shareholders are nervous. We need to consider new leadership." Victor, who once would have responded with anger and threats, took a different approach. He listened calmly to the concerns, then spoke. "Gentlemen," he began, "I understand your concerns. But let me ask you this. Isn't a leader who can acknowledge his mistakes and strive to make amends exactly what this company needs? We've always prided ourselves on our integrity. Let's show the world that we mean it." Marcus, who had been invited to the meeting as a show of transparency, added his perspective. "As someone who was on the receiving end of Mr. Caldwell's past actions, I can attest to the genuineness of his efforts to make things right. Isn't that the kind of ethical leadership we want to showcase?" The board members exchanged glances, surprised by Marcus's eloquence and poise. After a heated debate, they voted to retain Victor as CEO, with the caveat that a special committee would be formed to monitor the company's public image. While the professional conflict showed signs of resolution, personal conflicts continued to simmer. Evelyn, despite her public show of support at the gala, struggled with feelings of betrayal and insecurity. One evening, she confronted Victor in their bedroom. "How can I ever trust you again?" she demanded, tears in her eyes. "Every time I look at Marcus, I'm reminded of your infidelity." Victor, realizing that simply saying "I'm sorry" wasn't enough, suggested they attend couples therapy. It was a humbling experience for a man who had always prided himself on self-reliance, but it proved to be a crucial step in rebuilding their relationship. During one particularly intense session, Evelyn finally vocalized her deepest fear. "I feel like I'm competing with a ghost," she admitted. "Amara, the road not taken. Am I just the consolation prize?" Victor took her hands in his eyes brimming with sincerity. "Evelyn, you are the love of my life. What happened with Amara was a mistake, one I regret deeply. But you, our children, our life together, that's my choice every day. You're not a consolation prize. You're the grand prize." These words, coupled with Victor's consistent efforts to rebuild trust, slowly began to heal the rift between them. Evelyn started to see Marcus not as a threat to her marriage, but as an extension of the family she had built with Victor. Meanwhile, Elizabeth was grappling with her own conflicted feelings about Marcus. Her initial hostility had given way to a confused mix of curiosity and resentment. Victor Jr., noticing his sister's internal struggle, decided to intervene. One afternoon, he invited Elizabeth to join him and Marcus for coffee. Reluctantly, she agreed. As they sat in the cozy cafe, an awkward silence fell over the table. "Liz," Victor Jr. finally said, "I know this is weird for you. It's weird for all of us. But Marcus is our brother, and he's not going anywhere. Can you at least try to get to know him?" Elizabeth looked at Marcus, really looked at him for the first time. She saw the discomfort in his eyes, the way he nervously fiddled with his coffee cup. In that moment, she realized that this situation was just as difficult for him as it was for her. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I've been unfair to you, Marcus. This isn't your fault." Marcus gave her a tentative smile. "Thank you, Elizabeth. I know I can't replace the relationship you have with Victor Jr., and I don't want to. But if you're open to it, I'd like the chance to be your brother too." This conversation marked the beginning of a cautious but genuine attempt at building a sibling relationship between Elizabeth and Marcus. On the business front, Victor faced another challenge when a key client threatened to pull their contract, citing concerns about the company's stability in light of the recent scandal. Victor decided to take a risk and bring Marcus into the negotiations. In the meeting, Marcus's legal expertise and fresh perspective proved invaluable. He proposed a restructuring of the contract that addressed the client's concerns while also benefiting Caldwell Industries. The client was impressed, not just by the solution but by the evident strength of the Caldwell family working together. As they left the meeting, contract renewed and expanded, Victor felt a surge of pride. "You were brilliant in there," he told Marcus. "You know, there's a place for you at Caldwell Industries if you want it." Marcus was quiet for considering. "Thank you," he said finally. "But I think I need to make my own way, at least for now. I appreciate the offer, though." Victor nodded, respecting his son's decision. "The offer stands whenever you're ready." This exchange highlighted the growing respect between father and son, and their ability to maintain boundaries even as they grew closer. The process of conflict resolution extended beyond the immediate family. Victor and Marcus decided to establish a foundation in Amara's name, dedicated to supporting single mothers and promoting education for underprivileged youth. This act served multiple purposes. It honored Amara's memory, gave Marcus a connection to his mother's legacy, and allowed the Caldwell family to channel their past mistakes into positive action. The foundation's launch event became a platform for Victor to publicly address the mistakes of his past and his commitment to making amends. His speech, honest and heartfelt, went viral, sparking discussions about corporate responsibility, second chances, and the evolving definition of family. "I can't change the past," Victor said, his voice carrying across the hushed auditorium. "But I can learn from it. I can do better. And I can use the resources at my disposal to ensure that others don't face the same hardships that Amara did." As he spoke, Victor saw Evelyn in the audience, nodding encouragingly. Marcus stood beside him on the stage, a symbol of the bridge they were building between past and present. The road to resolution was not smooth. There were setbacks, arguments, and moments of doubt. But with each conflict faced and worked through, the bonds within the Caldwell family grew stronger. They were learning to communicate more openly, to face problems together rather than letting them fester. By tackling each conflict head-on, whether it was board members questioning Victor's leadership, Evelyn's struggles with trust, Elizabeth's resentment, or the broader societal judgment, the Caldwells were slowly but surely forging a new family dynamic. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, built on honesty, effort, and a shared commitment to making things work. As the dust began to settle, Victor realized that the process of resolving these conflicts had not only salvaged his family and his company, but had also led to personal growth he never would have thought possible. The man who had once run from his responsibilities was now facing them head-on, and in doing so, was becoming a better father, husband, and leader. The conflicts weren't over. There would always be new challenges to face. But now the Caldwell family faced them together, stronger for having weathered the storm. The one-year anniversary of Marcus's re-entry into Victor's life marked a significant turning point for the Caldwell family. As they gathered for a private dinner at Victor and Evelyn's home, the mood was reflective. The past year had been a roller coaster of emotions, conflicts, and resolutions. Now, standing on the precipice of a new chapter, they found themselves at a crossroads. Victor, his hair a little grayer but his eyes bright with purpose, raised his glass for a toast. "To family," he said, his gaze sweeping across the faces around the table. "Evelyn, Victor Jr., Elizabeth, and Marcus. To second chances and new beginnings." As they clinked glasses, there was a sense of a page-turning, of a new direction unfolding before them. The conflicts of the past year, while not forgotten, had been largely resolved. Now, the question was, where do we go from here? It was Marcus who first articulated the shift they all felt. "You know," he said, setting down his glass, "for the past year we've been reacting to the revelation, to the public scrutiny, to our own emotions. Maybe it's time we started proactively shaping our future as a family." His words resonated with everyone at the table. They had spent so much time dealing with the fallout of the past that they hadn't fully considered the possibilities of the future. Inspired by Marcus's perspective, they began to discuss their visions for the future, both individually and as a family. Victor spoke of his desire to use Caldwell Industries as a force for positive change in the community. Evelyn shared her plans to become more involved in the Amara Johnson Foundation. Victor Jr. and Elizabeth, energized by their expanded family, talked about new career directions they were considering. As the conversation flowed, a new sense of purpose began to crystallize. The Caldwells weren't just a family brought together by circumstance anymore. They were a unit with the potential to make a real difference in the world. "What if," Victor proposed, his eyes alight with excitement, "we align all our efforts, Caldwell Industries, the foundation, our individual pursuits, all working towards a common goal of creating positive change?" The idea took hold, sparking a brainstorming session that lasted late into the night. By the time the dinner ended, a new direction had been set. The Caldwells would use their influence, resources, and individual talents to address issues of inequality, education, and corporate responsibility. This new direction wasn't just about public image or making amends. It was about taking the lessons learned from their personal journey and applying them on a larger scale. It was about turning their family's story of reconciliation and growth into a force for good in the world. As they said their goodnights, there was a palpable sense of anticipation in the air. The past year had been about healing and coming together. The year ahead would be about moving forward, not as individuals, but as a united family with a shared mission. Victor, the last to leave, stood in the doorway of his home, watching his expanded family depart. He felt a profound sense of gratitude and purpose. The man who had once run from his responsibilities was now embracing them fully, ready to lead his family into a future bright with possibility. The turning point had been reached, the new direction set. The Caldwell family was ready to write the next chapter of their story. Together. As the Caldwell family embarked on their new direction, each member found themselves reflecting on their personal growth over the past year. The journey had changed them all, in ways both subtle and profound. Victor, once solely focused on business success and maintaining appearances, had undergone perhaps the most dramatic transformation. As he sat in his office late one night, his gaze fell on a framed photo of the entire family, taken at the recent anniversary dinner. He marveled at the genuine smiles, the sense of unity that radiated from the image. "I spent so many years running from my mistakes," he mused to himself. "Now facing them head-on has given me more than I ever could have imagined." He thought about the man he used to be. Driven, yes, but also selfish and afraid of vulnerability. Now he found strength and openness, in admitting his faults and working to be better. His relationship with Marcus had taught him the true meaning of fatherhood. Beyond just providing financially, he was learning to listen, to support, to be present in ways he never had before. Evelyn's growth was equally significant. She had moved from a place of hurt and resentment to one of acceptance and renewed purpose. Her work with the Amara Johnson Foundation had opened her eyes to struggles she had never before considered. One afternoon, as she was preparing for a foundation event, she caught sight of herself in the mirror. The woman looking back at her seemed different, stronger, more confident. "I'm not just Victor Caldwell's wife anymore," she realized. "I'm my own person, making a difference in my own right." Marcus, who had entered this situation with anger and a desire for acknowledgement, found himself on a journey of forgiveness and self-discovery. He had gained a family, yes, but more than that, he had gained a new understanding of himself. During a quiet moment at work, Marcus reflected on how far he'd come. A year ago, I thought confronting Victor would bring me closure, he thought. Instead, it opened up a whole new chapter of my life. He realized that forgiving Victor hadn't been about excusing past actions, but about freeing himself to move forward. In getting to know his father, he had also come to better understand himself, his drive, his ambition, even some of his flaws. Victor Jr. and Elizabeth, too, had grown in unexpected ways. Victor Jr., always the peacekeeper, had found his voice. Standing up for Marcus had shown him the power of speaking out for what he believed in. Elizabeth had learned to look beyond her own hurt, to extend empathy to others, even those who had inadvertently caused her pain. One evening, as the siblings were having dinner together, a new tradition they had started, Elizabeth raised her glass. To growth, she said, and to the family we've become, not just the family we were born into. The others echoed her toast, each feeling the weight of the words. They had all grown, individually and together. The challenges they had faced had forged them into a stronger, more compassionate unit. As they continued their meal, sharing stories and plans for the future, there was a sense of gratitude in the air. Gratitude for the journey, difficult as it had been. Gratitude for the bonds that had been forged and strengthened. Gratitude for the growth that had brought them to this point. The Caldwell family's story was far from over. There would be more challenges to face, more growth to experience. But as they sat there, enjoying each other's company, they knew they were on the right path. They had learned to face their past, to be honest about their feelings, and to support each other through both good times and bad. Their growth, both individual and collective, had transformed a potential tragedy into a story of redemption, forgiveness, and the enduring power of family. As they looked to the future, they did so not as separate individuals, but as a united front, ready to face whatever came next, together. As the sun set on another day in New York City, Victor Caldwell stood at the window of his office, gazing out at the skyline. The view was the same as it had been for years, but Victor saw it with new eyes. The glittering buildings were no longer just symbols of his business success, but reminders of the lives touched by his family's new mission. He thought about the journey of the past year, from the moment Marcus walked into his office to the family dinner where they had charted their new course. It had been a path filled with pain, confrontation, and difficult truths. But it had also been a journey of growth, forgiveness, and redemption. The theme that had run through their entire story resonated in Victor's mind. It's never too late to face your past, to make amends, and to change your future. Their family had been fractured by secrets and mistakes, but through honesty, effort, and love, they had forged something new and beautiful. As if on cue, there was a knock at his door. Marcus entered, followed by Evelyn, Victor Jr., and Elizabeth. They were there to discuss the latest initiative of their foundation, but as Victor looked at their faces, smiling, united, purposeful, he felt a swell of emotion. "You know," he said, his voice thick with feeling, "a year ago, I thought my life was over. But really, it was just beginning." The others nodded in understanding. They had all been transformed by this experience, had all found new purpose and strength. As they gathered around Victor's desk, ready to continue their work of making a difference in the world, the message was clear. It's never too late to right a wrong, to rebuild what's broken, to become the person you were meant to be. The Caldwell family stood as living proof that with courage, compassion, and commitment, even the deepest wounds could heal, and the most unlikely bonds could form. Their story, which had begun with a moment of weakness and fear, had become a testament to the power of facing one's mistakes and choosing to do better. As they looked to the future, they did so not as individuals weighed down by the past, but as a family united by love, strengthened by adversity, and committed to making a positive impact on the world. The Caldwell family's journey was far from over, but they faced the road ahead with hope, determination, and the unshakable knowledge that together they could overcome anything. Their story had become more than just a personal redemption. It was a beacon of hope for others, a living example of the transformative power of honesty, forgiveness, and second chances.